Time for me to take a pleasant Sabbath walk. I'm a Sabbatarian Christian. I only mention that as a side. I don't really want to discuss or argue about that online. I don't think arguing ever convinced anything or anybody of anything. So leaving that aside, I go for these walks. I enjoy going for walks, especially because we've got natural surroundings here. And basically I'm going to say out loud what I'm usually thinking when I'm going through here and point out some of what I see. What I'm looking at, this is actually at the front of my property on the road allowance. This is a black cherry tree. It's not really a tree, it's a little more than a shrub right now. If you look at it closely, you can see black and knobby things on it, which are the beginning of burls, or they are burls, but they're not very big. They're very loose, the small ones at the top, so when you try to turn them, they just blow apart. And I'm not really into setting them in resin and trying to turn them that way. It is a disease, it's called black rot fungus. It is not good for the trees. It's not a symbiotic relationship. It is killing these trees. You can see the leaf growth at the top is a little bit ratty and thin. I'm expecting to cut this one down at some point and harvest the wood for my wood shop. It's better for the trees around it because the black rot fungus it's contagious, and a lot of the trees are affected by it here. I just would rather use it than have it just die there and then rot to nothing. I don't think it's doing any real good. And I have the right to take it. It's on the road allowance. There are a couple more up the road here. I might point them out as I go. As a wood turner who harvests a lot of my own wood, I can probably name every single tree along here, the type of tree it is. On the side here, the stuff that's got the skeletonized leaves is all alder, with the occasional black cherry mixed in. There's one right in front of us there. It's a small one. And in behind is some spruce trees. And you can see some birch trees in there. Those are gray birch. They're excellent turning. Excellent turning. They're not great firewood, and they're not great cabinet wood, which is why they don't get used for that. But they are they're useful in turning. They turn very nicely. And also right straight in front of is a red cherry tree. Not red cherry, red maple. Red maple is a also called soft maple. It is used in cabinet work. Not all the maple that you see on the market is hard maple. It's softer. It also turns very nicely. There is hard maple native to this area, but there's none of it growing in the back here. There's a bit of it growing in a grove by the local farmer there, but I don't have permissions on that. I don't think they want me to cut it out anyway. That's a nice grove of trees. You see another diseased cherry tree there. That's also on the road allowance, and I have no difficulty going and cutting that out. Some more gray birch. There's some volunteer apple trees here. The one straight ahead there, I actually pruned it hoping to turn it into a productive tree where we can actually reach the apples. I've semi-succeeded. I pruned it probably at the wrong time of year, but I basically went through and did some structural work on it. It had a lot of crossing branches that interfere with each other. And some of these apple trees in this area are pretty gnarled up. There's another one across the road here. It's a lot bigger. I didn't mess with that one at all. I don't think it's technically on the road allowance either, so I don't really have access to it. But this little one was a cute little project, and this is where I got a lot of my apple wood. There is some apples on it this year. Last year was just terrible. There was virtually nothing on it. In general, I've left the apples for the bears. Me and the bears kind of have, the black bears in the area have kind of a unspoken agreement. I let them eat in peace, and they don't bug me. In fact, they're quite scared of me, to be honest. Which has its advantages. I'd rather stay that way. Aggressive bear can be a major problem, especially since we're a family with younger children living back in here. You see, it just continues on like this. I actually have a legal right to take anything that's on the road allowance, and most of the locals wouldn't whine if I took anything, if I took it all, because I know sooner or later the town or the snowmobile club or whoever maintains this road is going to clear these ditches, and they're going to do it with a cutter bar or a tree grinder, and they will leave absolute destruction behind them. And I've seen it before. It looks absolutely horrible for at least a year. They know what I do is quite surgical. I only take what I need anyway. I don't have good storage space, and what I cut I don't want to just rot. I want it to be used. So with limited storage space and limited physical capacity for turning this stuff into products, yeah, I'm really not making a huge dent in this. Try to take what's most likely to be a problem. For example, if a tree gets blown over onto the road, it's cut up by me for firewood or for turning wood. And everybody's quite happy with that, because that way they can use the road and I get my wood. There are some other types of trees growing in here, and I'm just getting up a little further because we're still looking at stuff that I've already discussed, at least in passing here. If you see kind of in the distance, I don't know how much you can see of this, but there's evergreen trees that have a thinner appearance than the spruce. Those are tamarack, and they're actually not evergreen. They drop their needles in the winter. And yeah, there's a good one right there sticking up over top of everything. That's interesting wood. I've used it for firewood. A lot of them died out here, and I cut up a lot of dead ones. They are beautiful firewood. I don't know how well they turn. They have what's called interlocking grain, which elm also shares that feature, as well as some black willow growing here in the ditch up ahead. And I think we're going to get that far before I get my 10-minute bit of business done here. And you see a thicker trunk going through the thing there. I'm going to get into the sun there. We're going to kind of throw up the picture. That's actually quaking aspen. It's not a good turning wood. The fibers don't always break, and it tears out real easy. I'm thinking of using something to stiffen up the fibers while I'm turning it, because it does have a really nice pattern to the grain. The coloration's quite nice, actually, quite different. And I've got a really nice bowl made out of that, so it's worth spending some effort after. I'm just not sure what most wood turners are using is something I want to do, because CAA glue is pretty, the super glue stuff that they use to stiffen up the fibers is pretty expensive, and I am not a wealthy man, so I'd rather keep it within what I can do. Now in here, I'm just going to stick the camera in here a little bit. You can see stuff growing here with more ridged bark. I see a good example of rigid bark with ridges in it. Shows more in some examples further up. This is black willow. What good that is for turning, we'll find out. I have a chunk of it, I just haven't had time to get to it. What I like to do for my tests is turn a small candy bowl and turn a bud vase. And between the two of them, the different techniques used, I can pretty much determine my opinion of what I think of it as a turning wood. And it's reflected pretty much the same as what other people have said about wood online. I want to make sure that the information I give that is useful. From my experience, I want to be able to really show what I can do. There's more quaking aspen here. It grows in big bunches because it doesn't really reproduce much by seed. It reproduces by sprouting off the roots. So technically that whole grove is one organism instead of just one, unless they get separated physically somehow. They're one of the most common trees in Canada, by the way. The alder is quite common. Most of the species back in here are quite common. You're watching my time. Yeah, I'm over 10 minutes already. We'll go a little bit longer because there are some different varieties up ahead. There is a grove of, well, a grove, there's a clump of white elm that I'm likely to cut a piece out of because it's on the road allowance, and the way it's growing, it's going to choke itself out. And I'm thinking I can take a couple pieces and all I'm going to do is make it healthier, because they do grow into magnificent trees. And there's not as many of them left now that Dutch elm disease in my childhood went through and ravaged the population. The other direction, there's a grove of ash. The same sort of thing is happening to the ash trees in this country. We are unaffected here at this point. The emerald ash borer. It's in New Brunswick in the northern part. They've been trying to spray for it in the central part. Down here, we're all the way in the southeastern corner, and it hasn't reached this far yet that we know of. I know ways to test, but it would mean cutting wood that's not mine, and I'll do it. Yeah, we're right here by this grove of elm. I'm gonna finish my little video with that. On this channel, I just talk. I'll show my shop and show me working in the shop, but it'll just mainly be talk. It won't be the more professional videos. If this interests you, by all means subscribe. I would be more than happy if you went over to MFCP Woodworking and subscribed to my more serious stuff. Also, I get a lot of help from my son, Amy, too. Wesley does a good job over there. He does some interesting stuff. If you like gaming stuff, he's the one to check out. He also does some stomping around in the bush videos, which we like to do together. That great father-son time. Anyway, I'm going to call that a video. So thanks for watching, and don't forget, time flies whether you're having fun or not.